How do you overcome the resistance? This is a question that came up over and over again in my in-person mastermind meeting here in Spokane, Washington, just last week. These are high-powered entrepreneurs, people who are succeeding, who are crushing it. Yet many of them had this problem, they felt, with the resistance, that thing that Steven Pressfield writes about so eloquently in his book, The War of Art, which is a great book, by the way. I recommend it. I've read it many times myself. It's been a great encouragement to me. However, I think it may be a mistake for us to try to attack that big capital R resistance if we're trying to get more bandwidth in our day, in our week, in our life, so that we can tackle the bigger problems, the bigger challenges, the bigger opportunities. So what do I mean? I mean, instead of thinking about overcoming the big R, capital R resistance, think about the smaller bits of friction in the system of your business that if you could remove them would give you more time, more mental and psychological space to deal with the other stuff. I'm going to give you 3 steps to take to eliminate a lot of friction in your life. I think you're going to find this super useful. Number 1, eliminate self-created resistance. These are the inefficiencies in your workflows that slow you down and cost you extra time and mental and psychological bandwidth. You probably have some phrases and some information you type over and over into your computer again and again. It may be things like your business address. It may be things like phone numbers, birthdays, outlines for podcasts, you name it. Anything that's text that you have to write more than once, you should templatize it. I have a program on my Mac called Text Expander. I also have it on my iPad and on my iPhone. And Text Expander allows me to use a few keystrokes and it'll pop out an entire document if I wanted to. What I use it most for that saves me so much time though, is those little things I have to keep putting into forms online or into social media posts. For instance, when I publish this podcast, I publish a promotional video as a story and as a short story on Instagram, short on YouTube, and a video on TikTok. And every time I do that, I have been typing in the URL of the podcast feed. Ridiculous. Yes. But it only occurred to me recently I should make that into a text expander snippet so I can hit a few keys on my iPad or my iPhone for that matter, and it'll populate that entire URL right where I need it. And it only saves me maybe 10 or 15 seconds. But if you do that week after week, it adds up. My point is, there are many such little inefficiencies you have in your schedule you could clean up. Little points of friction. Another opportunity for taking care of that kind of friction is self-created is if you have a team, you could develop a standardized way of making requests of your team that get input into your Asana or your ClickUp or whatever system you use to run your projects. And we call this in our company a vision caster, a term I borrowed from Michael Hyatt, whose idea this was and is. And a vision caster is simply a clear description of what the project is I'm asking my team to do, who I think should do it, what are the steps that they should take so that it's completed in a way that's going to make me happy with the result, and how am I going to know when they're done and whether they've done a good job, what's the level of delegation, all these questions, which used to take a meeting, a Zoom meeting, an interminably long Zoom meeting. And I realized one day I just need to fill out one of these forms, one of these vision casters, and then all the questions are answered in advance. If they have any other questions they can clarify with me quickly, this can save me 2 to 3 hours a week currently. That's a lot of friction I eliminated from my business by doing something that makes everybody else happy too, because they know what I want. They don't have to guess. You know, many people will say, well, I wish my staff could just read my mind. Well, your team can read your mind when you write it down for them, like in a vision caster. Another example is batching similar workflows so you can get a lot of work done at one time, uninterrupted, and instead of doing it at random incidents throughout the week. For instance, recording this podcast is something I have scheduled each week at the same time. I know that's what that time is for. It's blocked off on my calendar. Going forward, I intend to do that without exception, except in very rare and unusual cases. I say going forward because in the past I have aspired to this practice and I have been so disorganized for lots of reasons, none of them really valid probably, that I wasn't able to do this or chose not to do this on a regular basis. But going forward, we have so many things happening right now in my business. I have to become more efficient. I don't have a choice of goofing off and doing it in a way that costs us 3 to 4 times as much time out of our week to get it done. So I have a set time. It's a block time. And in fact, I record 2 podcasts a week in this block time. That is batching similar tasks together so I can get it all done at one time, uninterrupted. Everybody knows what I'm doing on the team. They know these are the hours Ray's going to be recording the podcast. Don't mess with him. These are all self-created friction points in your business. Look at your own business and your own day-to-day activities, and you're going to find these things that you can straighten out for yourself. You're going to know instantly, oh, I could do this easier if I had templates, if I used Text Expander, if I used block time scheduling. You don't know about that? Look it up. Google it. There's plenty of material about it. It's not difficult to do. It'll help you. It'll change your life. It'll remove lots of friction. So once you've gotten rid of most of the self-induced friction, you can move on to step 2. Step 2 is permission-based resistance. This is friction you allow other people to create in your life and in your business because you give them permission to. Even if you haven't given it explicitly and said, sure, call me anytime, interrupt whatever I'm doing, I'll take your call. Even if you haven't said that, you create permission by not drawing a boundary right up front. So for instance, I have certain hours during the day that I will accept phone calls, meetings with people, Zoom meetings, whatever technology we're using to talk. Outside those times, I don't accept any appointments. Very rare exceptions. If the President of the United States calls me and wants to talk, I'll make time for him. Other examples of this are your email inbox, which, as Brendan Bouchard has mentioned before, this is just a convenient way for people to add things to your to-do list without your permission. But they have your permission if you allow them to do it. So if you're using your email inbox as a to-do list, that's an inefficiency that is both self-inflicted and externally inflicted by other people. It's permission-based. One way to deal with this is only check email once per day. Maximum, once per day. There's nothing anybody's emailed you that has to be answered right that moment. Unless that's your job. If it is, you have to find another way to work around this. But for most of us, it's not our main job. It's not our main task. We don't get paid to answer email. So my suggestion for you is this is a permission-based point of friction you can remove by simply not answering email except during maybe 1 hour of a day or less. And if you do it efficiently, it only takes an hour or less, no matter how many emails you're getting. My guess is you're not getting more than I am. And if I can do this, you can do it. By the way, you don't need to write an obnoxious autoresponder that says, I only respond to emails at 4 p.m. every day, Monday through Thursday, because that annoys the heck out of people. Just don't answer except for that one time per day, and make sure you answer at that time per day faithfully. People will get the message. And there's nothing that's coming by email that can't wait until the next time you check your email, even if it's the next day at 4 p.m. or whenever you decide works for you. Now, what if there's an emergency and people need to get in contact with you right away? Well, presumably, if you're the person they're calling in an emergency, they have your phone number and they can call you, which leads to another kind of permission-based friction, accepting phone calls at any time. I don't accept phone calls ever, except for people who are on my personal favorite VIP list on my phone. That's my wife, my son, my assistant, a few other people on my team, my mom, my brothers. Those people, I'll take their call immediately if I think it's an emergency. If I think it's just they want to chat, I'll call them back. If they need to talk to me right away, they know to call me 2 or 3 times. I'll get right back to them. Or they can text me and let me know if there's an emergency. I need to talk to you. If I don't take phone calls just when they come in, don't people get upset with me? And how do I handle the fact that some people really do want to hear from me immediately? First of all, just because somebody decides to call me, just because they had an idea to call me, does not instantly create an obligation for me to answer. Ever. That's just a fact. It's true for you too. Secondly, they will leave a voicemail if you instruct them to, and I listen to my voicemails once per day. I return the calls to people who need to have me call them back. Otherwise, it goes to my assistant who takes care of answering those inquiries for me. I return phone calls during one block of time per day, and that's it. Sometimes it's not even once per day. Sometimes I decide none of these need to be answered by tomorrow. These can wait till Friday, whenever. Those are a few examples of permission-based friction points that you can simply remove the permission. What about people who drop by unexpectedly? Just meet them at the door, smile and say, I'm sorry, this is not a good time. Can we make an appointment for when you want to come by and visit with me? Or can we set up a Zoom call, etc.? Just some thoughts to consider. You're giving them permission by not drawing a boundary. Maybe you should draw a boundary. And if you're worried about people getting upset with you, the people who are upset when you draw a boundary are the very people that required you to create it. You've got to learn to draw boundaries and gracefully enforce them. Okay, that's 2 steps. I've told you how to handle self-created friction or resistance. I've told you how to handle permission-based friction or resistance. The third kind of resistance you can remove from your life is externally produced friction or resistance. These are things that you are not in control of. For instance, when the pandemic struck and the government began restricting people's activities and shutting down businesses, that was friction we could not do anything about. It's an external circumstance that affects us all. We don't have any choice but to deal with it. So how can I suggest you eliminate these externally created circumstances that cause friction in your business? Maybe it's the cost of certain materials you use in your manufacturing process. If you make actual products, physical products, those are things outside of your control. What's not outside of your control is the way you respond to those things. First, it's your mindset. You're either in a scarcity or poverty mindset, or you're in an abundance mindset. An abundance mindset will say in those circumstances, there's got to be some way we can turn this to our advantage. There's got to be some way we can use this, something we can learn from it. There's something that could be great about it if we just figure out what it is could be great about it. That's your mindset, your way to approach the problem. Because so often, the way we approach the problem, the way we think about the problem, is the problem. If we can think about it from a possibility standpoint, it almost always affords us the opportunity to get something greater as a benefit of having faced that adversity that was externally enforced upon us. If, on the other hand, we have a poverty mindset or a scarcity mindset, we tend to give up, to be sour, to be bitter, to be angry, and that does not produce any good result in our life. It just makes us feel worse, and it hurts our health. If you take these 3 steps and you eliminate self-created friction or resistance, number 1, you eliminate permission-based resistance or friction that you allow other people to impose upon you, number 2, and number 3, if you eliminate negative, non-empowering, non-useful responses to externally impressed friction or resistance in your life, if you can take care of those 3 steps, you will create so much spaciousness in your schedule, in your mental capacity, and in your emotional and psychological capacity. You're going to feel like you've shed 100 pounds off your shoulders, because in a very real way you have. So eliminate those kinds of friction first. Get rid of that kind of resistance first. And when you've done that, you're going to have the psychological and emotional resources and the intellectual resources and the energetic physical resources to be able to deal with the bigger capital R resistance, which we'll talk about on a future show. Take this and run with it. I'd love to hear how you've used the information in this show to remove resistance or friction from your life and how it's improved things for you. So let me know. Hit me up on the socials. Links are down below. Until next time, God bless you. May you live long and enjoy great health, and may you prosper with purpose. See you next time.